For almost 2 decades, a small Ohio town was absolutely terrorized by an invisible enemy, someone who knew everyone's secrets and was not afraid to use them. We're talking about hundreds of poison pen letters that tore families apart, led to a suspicious death, and left behind a trail of tragedy that people still talk about today. This is the bizarre story of the Circleville letter writer.
Just imagine opening your mailbox and finding this. This is a direct quote from one of the first letters sent to a school bus driver named Mary Gillespie. It's personal, it's threatening, and believe me, it was only the beginning of a years-long campaign of absolute terror. All right, so let's set the scene. We're going back to 1977 in the little town of Circleville, Ohio. On the surface, it was your typical, quiet, all-American kind of place. But that was all about to change when these anonymous letters started showing up in mailboxes, just filled with secrets and poison.
Now what's interesting is the whole thing didn't actually start with Mary. The very first letters, written in this really distinct block lettering, went to the local school superintendent, a guy named Gordon Massey. They accused him of some pretty inappropriate stuff with female bus drivers and demanded he stop. But very quickly the writer's focus narrowed, and it got intensely personal, zeroing in on just one of those drivers.
And this was the accusation at the heart of it all. This was the writer's obsession. They claimed that Mary Gillespie, a married woman, was having an affair with her boss, Superintendent Massey, who was also married. And this alleged affair became the writer's primary weapon to just wreak havoc.
But this was never going to stay as just malicious gossip on a page. The writer's campaign escalated fast. It spilled out of private mailboxes right into the public eye, and led directly to an unbelievable tragedy.
You see, the writer's goal was pure public humiliation. They started posting these crude, obscene signs all over Circleville, and they weren't just about the alleged affair anymore. Nope. They were targeting Mary, her husband Ron, and even making these disgusting accusations that involved their young daughter. Can you imagine? Every single morning, Ron had to drive around town pulling down these signs before his own kids could see them.
It is just stunning how quickly this all spiraled out of control. We're talking just 5 months. It goes from anonymous letters to public shaming. And then on the night of August 19th, Ron Gillespie gets a phone call. He's suddenly convinced he knows who the writer is. So he grabs his gun, jumps in his car, and speeds off to confront them. Minutes later, he's dead.
So right away, you've got 2 totally different stories about Ron's death. The official report, pretty cut and dried, a tragic drunk driving accident. But Ron's family, especially his brother-in-law Paul Freshour, was absolutely adamant he'd been murdered, forced off the road in some kind of high-speed chase. The sheriff couldn't find any evidence of a second car, but the family's doubts, they would linger for years.
You'd think after someone died, this would all stop, but no. The letters kept coming. They even accused Mary and the superintendent of being responsible for Ron's death. This harassment went on for 6 more long years, building up to the single most terrifying moment of the entire case.
Okay, picture this. Mary's on her daily bus route, and she sees another one of those awful signs, this time about her teenage daughter. She pulls over to rip it down, but she notices it's tied to a small box. Police would later figure out it was a booby trap. A gun inside was rigged to fire the second the sign was pulled off the fence. By just happening to take the entire box with her, Mary unknowingly saved her own life. This booby trap was the first piece of real, solid, physical evidence the police had. Now, the serial number on the gun had been scratched off, but the forensics team actually managed to recover it. They traced it to a guy in Columbus who told them exactly who he sold it to. So, who owned the weapon that was meant to kill Mary Gillespie? And in a twist that absolutely nobody saw coming, the gun belonged to Paul Freshour. Yes, the very same man who was married to Ron Gillespie's sister and who had been publicly screaming that Ron was murdered. The prime suspect was now a member of their own family. So, with this shocking revelation, the police finally have their man. Or do they? Because as investigators started to build their case against Paul Freshour, the evidence was anything but a slam dunk, leading to a conviction that a lot of people still question to this day. So let's break this down. The case against Paul was completely circumstantial. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it was his gun. His ex-wife testified against him saying he was the writer, and he failed a polygraph. But on the other hand, there were no fingerprints, and he had a rock-solid alibi, with witnesses confirming he was at home that day.
He always claimed the gun had been stolen from his garage.
And yet, despite the lack of physical evidence, despite all the questions, the jury deliberated for just a little over 2 hours before coming back with a verdict. Guilty. Paul Freshour was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 7 to 25 years in prison. He ended up serving a full decade. For the police, and for many in the terrified town of Circleville, the case was finally closed.
But it wasn't closed, not even close, because with Paul Freshour locked away in a maximum security prison, something happened that should have been completely impossible, and it leads us to the final, most baffling chapter of this whole story.
Okay, this is the detail that just turns the entire case completely on its head. With the guy they convicted behind bars, the letters kept coming. We're talking hundreds more of them, all postmarked from Columbus, which is almost 100 miles from the prison. The warden himself said it was impossible for Paul to be sending them. He was in isolation, and every piece of his mail was meticulously inspected. In what has to be one of the most audacious moves ever, the writer even sent a letter to Paul in prison, taunting him. Can you even imagine that? You're in prison for a crime you say you didn't commit, and the real perpetrator is out there mocking you, making sure you stay locked up. It's just chilling. The tragic legacy of these letters just went on for decades. Paul Freshour served his 10 years, got out in 1994, and insisted he was innocent right up until his death in 2012. And in one final bizarre twist, the letter stopped for good the very same year he was released. And yet, even with all these inconsistencies, the Pickaway County Sheriff's Office says the case is officially closed. And that leads us with the central, maddening question at the heart of this whole thing. The authorities say they got their man, but if that's true, who was writing all those letters from the outside? Did he have an accomplice, or was Paul Freshour just a convenient scapegoat, an innocent man caught in someone else's twisted web of deceit? It's a mystery that to this day the town of Circleville is still trying to solve.
Baffle.